السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Respected brothers and elders, mothers and sisters in Islam, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us in the company of the righteous in this world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise us amongst the righteous on the day of Qiyamah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our lives with mercy and rahmah, as all of us are in the need of the rahmah and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we continue our tafsir tonight of Surah al-Fatiha. But before we begin the tafsir itself, and of course it will just be a short tafsir, the heart doesn't really allow me fully to be engaged. Our dear brother Riyaz Patel, may Allah have mercy and rahmah upon him, left this world last night from us. He was a dear friend of ours, a brother of ours. Moments that you spend a lot of time close to certain people and you realize, subhanAllah, what qualities, what sifat, what blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept in people. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to take benefit and to recognize the blessings of those that are around us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a life of iman and take us away at a moment when Allah is pleased with us and Allah is razi with us. As why Rasulullah says in the hadith that don't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for maut or death, ask Allah to take you when it's time to be taken and Allah is pleased and razi with you, right? May Allah allow us to prepare for that journey itself, inshallah. So we continue from the tafsir of Surah al-Fatiha. We talked about its nuzul, its revelation, asbabul nuzul, the reason of its revelation. We talked about the words a'udhu billah, ta'awudh, bismillah, and as words tasmiyah as well. We also talked about the ayat alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen last week in a lot more detail. Tonight will only be 3 ayats. And it will be ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Maliki yawmiddin, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Just that we can take back. So we begin with the ayat Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. And both of these words loosely are translated as the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. Both words come from mercy. But in order to differentiate the least amount in English, we could say the entirely merciful, meaning the one that is merciful at all times, and the specifically or specific times or special mercy of Allah, which we will say the specifically merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'll explain that in just a few moments so we know what this actually means. So let's go back a little bit, brothers and sisters. The Arabic language usually derived from few root words, key words. And this is known as the root of all Arabic words. Some are known as thulathi, 3, some are known as ruba'i, 4, and some are even more than that. So for example, my name is Farhan. If you look at the root of that word itself, it stems from 3 Arabic words. Fa, ra, ha, faraha. That word itself, which is the root of the Arabic linguistics, differs into many other meanings. Faraha, yafrahu, farhanan, and other things, like so many other words can be derived from this root itself, but the root itself comes from joy, happiness, and words like that. When we talk about Rahman and Rahim, both of these words come and stem from a same root known as Rahama, which means Raham, mercy itself. So Rahman and Rahim both stem from the same origin or the same basis, same bunyad and foundation, which is Rahman. But now what is the difference? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so kareem, and of course the Qur'an itself is the greatest of the kalam, and every little thing in Qur'an is there for a specific reason. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention 2 words but with subhanallah, same root with two words that are used? Why not any other sifa or quality itself? So let's get into it a little bit more deeper. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts them together to allow us to understand that to put them together means in one sentence that there is a difference between these 2 words. They are not one. They are 2. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected and chose them. So now the word Ar-Rahman, which is the first word, which means the entirely merciful, has three key components to remember. And this is just very basic, very simple. I'm not going to the details. So when we talk about Rahman, the merciful, the entirely merciful, has three qualities behind it. Number one, someone who's extremely merciful. Right? You won't just say someone who's a little bit merciful, you won't tell them the quality of Rahman is inside of them. The first quality of Rahman is that they are extremely merciful, number one. Number two, that mercy or that thing is happening right now. The second quality of Rahman means that the mercy that is being spoken about is happening at this moment. Every single one of us, in some capacity, are benefiting from the quality of Rahman right now. All of us. It doesn't matter if it's one of the most difficult days of our lives. But I promise that every single one of us present here or listening to us online at this moment is enjoying a portion of Ar-Rahman's Rahmah in their life at this moment. So Rahman has three components that are attached. The mercy is extreme, number one. Number two, that mercy and that rahmat is happening at the moment right now. And number three is that mercy itself is also temporary. What do I mean by temporary? It means that it's transient, which means that it could be taken away if something wrong happens. These are three components to understand Rahman. When we talk about the mercy of Rahman, it means extreme amount of mercy. It means it's happening right now. And it also means that it is not there forever. It could be taken away if I do something wrong. Meaning it's transient, it's temporary, or it's moving. Meaning it's not something which is permanent. It's attached to something. That is Rahman. And keep that in mind for later translation, because there's a lot to absorb on how scholars differentiate Rahman and Rahim. And this is very simple words that I'm trying to use. The second word, Rahim, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, also comes from Raham, which also is the mercy of Allah. The word Ar-Rahim has two benefits, two things attached to it. Number one, it is permanent. It's not transient, it's not temporary, meaning, as I said, Ar-Rahman means that if I do something wrong, it can be taken away from me. That's Rahman. Rahim means, the mercy of Rahim means something that is permanent. You got it once, it's never going to be taken away from you. The mercy of Rahman means that it could be taken away from you if you do something wrong. The mercy of Rahim means once you got it, no one is taking it away from you. It's permanent. It's yours forever. Right? That's one quality to keep behind your minds. And the second thing is that the second quality of Rahim is that it may not be happening at the moment. Rahman means it's happening now. It's happening at the moment. Rahim means it may not be happening. It may be, but it may not be happening right now. But when it happens, it's never going to go away from you. This is just something basic to understand. Rahman and Rahim both comes from the root of Rahmat of Allah, mercy of Allah. One means the entirely merciful, one means specifically merciful. Rahman means something that is extremely merciful, something that is happening right now, and something that is transient, temporary, that may be taken away if something wrong happens. But Rahim refers to something that is permanent, that can never be taken away. It's yours forever. It never goes away. But it is not necessary that it's happening at the moment. It may happen at a later time. Or it may already be in our lives, in certain parts of our lives. But it may happen in a later time. Now, going further to it is that both words used here are showing us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being merciful to His creation. Right now and in future as well. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmat and mercy continues with us. And a caretaker, we talked about this last time, Rabb. Talked about Rabb. Rabb has many meanings. Last week we talked about Rabb. Rabb has many meanings. One of the meanings of Rabb is the one that takes care of it and does not let you go. The one that makes sure that all of your needs are fulfilled to the last point and doesn't let you astray in every part or any part of your life. So a person, a being, a deity that is a caretaker or a nurturer could be stern sometimes, right? When you're a caretaker of someone, sometimes you have to be a little bit more stern, right? Like for example, teachers or parents or guardians, sometimes they feel a little bit more stern because it's their responsibility, because they're caretakers for others. But subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after mentioning Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, after mentioning that He's the caretaker, we might have a thought that being caretaker and nurturer could mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could be stern with us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that we might, get distracted from the mercy of Allah. So Allah mentions two qualities of His rahmah, two qualities of His mercy. And He dispels this notion that Rabbil Alameen is with Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. That your Rabb Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, who nurtures you, who cares for you, who takes care of you, He's indeed merciful, the most merciful. There is no one more merciful than this. Because every time someone who's put in charge of something, you have to be a little bit more stronger in your approach. May Allah give our teachers the best of jaza. I remember we were sitting in our classes, and our teachers used to be very, very strict sometimes. And Allah reward them, and if they did not, I don't know where we would be. And we were in the last years of our classes. We were all adults. This is called Dawra Hadith, the last year of Hadith. You're going through Sahih Sitta, Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Nisa'i, Ibn Majah, Surah al-Nisa'i. You're going through the tedious work of thousands of ahadith, and your teacher is sitting there and he's, extreme, sometimes that focus because you're required to. And I now, sometimes that time you used to think why they're doing this, but now we feel like I wish they were a little bit more strict. I would have been much better than I am. But subhanAllah, one day something happened between few students. And I remember going back to our teacher. So he used to be a teacher in a local masjid nearby. So classes were done after Dhuhr. So we took a bus and we went to his local masjid. And, Ustadji was leading Asr namaz. He finished Asr and he said salam, and he saw us and we thought he was going to scream at us again, like, what are you doing here? And he came and he hugged all of us. He says, oh, beta, let's come home. And he went home, and I still remember he took out, these poor individuals barely have anything, but he took out these towels that he had somewhere from Hadi, and he gave all of us a single towel. I'm sure I have that. He gave us a single towel, and he made chai with his own hand, and he fed us, and all of that. And we're shocked. We're like, is that the same guy? Like in the morning? Like, is it okay? We're shocked like anything. And we thought everything is set now. Like, alhamdulillah, there's going to be no more pushing around in the classes anymore. And next day will be perfectly fine. And as soon as we get to class next day, he's like, you guys try to come to my house yesterday. Try to manipulate me and hijack me by coming home, Meaning he was stern again, sakht mizaj again. And then we asked him, Ustadji, why the differences? He's like, if we don't do your tarbiyat now, then who will do the tarbiyat? Sometimes who have to take care of you, nurture you, they have to be a little strict. That's why children sometimes feel that their parents are strict upon them, not realizing that it's the muhabbat and the love and the care that they have for you that no one else will have. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after mentioning Rabbul Alameen, He's mentioning Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. That your Rabb Tabaraka wa ta'ala might be the caretaker and the nurturer, but your Rabb is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. There is more mercy to your Rabb. There is more forgiveness to your Rabb. There is more giving to your Rabb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He takes that away. Some have also mentioned, and this is just with regards to Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the origin of the word itself. Some also have said that the word Ar-Rahman means a more general type of mercy that covers all of His creation. Whereas the word Ar-Rahim means there is a special type of mercy that He will only give the believers on the day of Qiyamah. So Rahman means the mercy of Allah given to everyone on the face of this earth. There are people at this moment who ascribe partners onto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are people at this moment now who are cursing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah forgive. But Allah provides for them. Allah nourishes them. Allah takes care of them. All of their needs and necessities are fulfilled. Allah puts them through their rizq and through their sustenance, through their siha, through their health, all of that. So the word Ar-Rahman means that the one that's mercy is am and common to everyone, believer or disbeliever. But the word Rahim means the mercy of Allah on the day of Qiyamah, specifically for believers and for no one else. That's why the quality of Rahim means something that may not be existing, but when it comes, it will be permanent. The rahmat of Allah will be permanent with Rahim to the believers, that no one can take away the rahmat of Allah from the day of Qiyamah. Once it starts on the day of judgment, the word Rahim, it can never be taken away. The mercy from Rahman may be taken away in this world. Of course, it may be not because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want us to have that. It may be our own misdeed that deprives us of the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why there's a famous dua that, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not deprive me of your khair because of my evil. Oh Allah, it's not you that you lack rahmat and mercy. Ya Allah, it is my evil that may stop me from receiving your rahmat and your mercy itself, right? So, Rahman refers to the one that is general. Rahim refers to that which is a very special type of mercy for the believers on the day of Qiyamah. Some have also said that the word Ar-Rahman may describe an essential attribute, meaning the source of mercy, while the word Rahim itself indicates an active attribute that manifests towards the recipient itself. So to support this context, they urge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala usually consistently uses the word Ar-Rahman in the context that aligns with His attributes with essence. And while Ar-Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frequently mentions or appears as an active description, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. So the Arabs of the time itself, and as we know that the Qur'an was revealed at a time when the people of Arabia were at the height and the climax of the Arabic language. And this is also a detailed topic for another day. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent every prophet at a time where the people were at the heights of their particular field. So Isa alayhi salam was sent at a time when people were at the height of medicine, health, cure. So Isa alayhi salam came and he was able to give eyes to those that were blind. He would raise the dead, he would make the birds fly, all with the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Musa alayhi salam came at a time when the people were at the height and the climax of magic. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Musa alayhi salam with something greater than the magic itself. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam came at a time when the people were at the climax of Arabic language, linguistics. Subhanallah, so much details. The Kaaba itself had something called Sab'a Mu'allaqat. This is actually a book taught in institutions where we study it. And it takes years and years to go through those particular books. Sab'a Mu'allaqat were the Arabic text of the poets of the time of Arabia. And whoever wrote the most distinguished or best writing, they would hang it on the Kaaba. Mu'allaqat means something that is hung. So there were always 7 pieces of poetry that were hung on the Kaaba because they were known for their poetry. And that's why when Inna A'tainaka al-Kawthar was revealed, the shortest ayats, all 7 of them removed their work. All 7 of the authors removed their work. And they said, our kalam is nothing in front of this ayah in the Qur'an. Right? So this is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to Arabs, mercy, Raham means when someone is completely taken care of. Raham means something that is completely taken care of. And that's why in the Arabic language, this is so profound, Allahu Akbar, that the womb of the mother is known as Raham. The womb of a mother is known as Raham. Why? Because a child does not need to do anything. They're completely taken care of. They don't need to work. They don't need to look for a job. They don't need to take care of the S&P and index 500 and all those fluctuations and things that are moving. It's nothing affects them. Their risk is connected. Their risk is given to them, right? So they're completely taken care of. So according to the Arabic linguistics, the word Raham, which is the root of Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim means the one that completely takes care of you. Right? That one that completely takes care of you. And that's the essence of Surah al-Fatiha, that we need to make ourselves dependent on Allah, that Ya Allah, it's you that take care of us. It's very hard to negate ourselves. We can negate the whole world, but it's very hard to negate myself, that I cannot even do anything except for the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's very hard to negate one's own self, that I cannot even do it. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who does. And that's why the word raham itself refers to the one that entirely takes care of it. That's why the word raham is also used in the Arabic, is derived from the same root as mercy, where the child is nourished. Another meaning of the word raham itself, scholars have mentioned, is that Allah's mercy is so vast that it cannot be comprehended. That's also one of the definitions of the word raham itself. And of course, we know that His mercy encompasses all things. His mercy that exists, that sustains, that receives, all of that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, He shows us and gives it to each and every person. So, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Now let's get to the third ayat of the Qur'an. Maliki Yawmiddin. The word Malik, Yawmiddin. And let's try to break this down as much as we can. Loose translation is Master of the Day of Judgment. I'll do deeper translation in just a few moments. Malik, which is the word itself that we'll break in a few moments. Yawmiddin, Yawm ad-Din. So, Master of the Day of Judgment. On that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer precisely for our deeds. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call us, and we have to answer for all our deeds and actions. Now, what day is this? It is a day in which we will be brought forth back to life. And we paid for what we have done. And all of His creation will be held accountable for their actions, and they will be provided for that. On that day, kings and subjects, doesn't matter who they were, as one of the Urdu Shair mentions, Zami ka gayi asama kaise kaise. The earth has swallowed or taken in kings and mights that the world thought would never leave this world. This earth has eaten the kings of the time. Right? That's how reality of life itself is, that nothing remains. So on that day, the kings and the subjects and the slaves and the free will all be equal and will submit fully to His might, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why it's the Master of the Day of Judgment. And they will await their reckoning, hoping that the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater than the punishment of their sins. So the word Malik, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this, Maliki Yawmiddin, is loosely translated as master, which can also refer to as the owner of the Day of Judgment, both meaning itself. But there's a little bit difference between an owner or a master or a king. What is that difference? So when someone is an owner, he or she pays very close attention to details, because you're the owner of something. You want to make sure that all the things are perfectly, properly done, because you're owner of something. You take care of it. Whereas if someone is a king, they, subhanAllah, are more concerned about the big things. They don't care about day-to-day little things as an owner would be. But subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Jalal and might is such that He's the owner and the king. He looks at the small and He looks at the big. Because if someone is an owner, Malik, they will only look at their own shop, they will only look at their own home, their own business, their own work, that's it. A king of a country or town doesn't care about what's happening in Westbury only in a large scale in single homes and houses. It's yes, generally they will have the news. But the owner of that place itself, and the owner is more specific, and the king at large, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the master, which means the owner and the king Himself, which means the small and the big, nothing is hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing is unturned from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this verse implies that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exercises full authority over the events of the Day of Judgment, the accounting, the rewarding, the punishing, as an owner who exercises over their own property. This is the power and the might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Day of Judgment has been specifically mentioned because His absolute power, lordship, will be apparent to every single person. And that's why there is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that near the day of Qiyamah, when the world will begin to end and the world will finish, and there will be no one left except for a few angels. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell Israel alayhi salam, the angel of death, to take the life of anything and everything below the earth, arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even Jibreel alayhi salam will be no more. And even Israel alayhi salam will be told to finish. And there will be nothing beneath the arsh of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make an announcement and say, Limanil mulkul yawm. Who is the king of all kings? Limanil mulkul yawm. Where are the kings? Where are the powers? Where are the mights? And for years there will be no reply because there's no one. And this is when the whole universe will be finished. Even the angels will not be present. Prior to the starting of the day of Qiyamah, authentic hadith. And then when there will be no reply after multiple times, then there will come a reply from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, Lillahi al-wahid al-qahar. Indeed, it is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one, the only, the absolute, the power, the most merciful, the most gracious, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the day of judgment itself will show the absolute power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we know that on the day of Qiyamah, there will be two types of people. Those who will receive the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah make us from amongst those who receive the mercy and the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world and on the day of Qiyamah. And the second, and I hope that we take this back, fully. As the scholars have mentioned, that there will be two types of people on that great day. Maliki Yawmiddin, the great day. Those who will receive His mercy, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second, those who will receive His justice. I don't want to say punishment, but it is something that those that have earned themselves, they will receive the adl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something to remember. So two types of people, those who will receive the mercy of Allah and those who will receive the adl, the justice, which of course refers to the punishment. And in this recitation of the verse itself, Muslims are reminded in every unit, in every prayer about the day of Qiyamah. And I say this very often, brothers and sisters, the better the yaqeen of akhirah, the better the amal and action of a person. The weaker the yaqeen of akhirah, the weaker the action. And it serves as an encouragement for us to prepare ourselves to righteous deeds and abstain from disobedience and evil and to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to mention the day of judgment after the attributes of His mercy is perhaps to remind us, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. So Kareem Allah is. After His sifat of mercy and rahmat, He's reminding us that do not lose the rahmat of Allah even on the day of Qiyamah. Even the rahmat of Allah on the day of Qiyamah. So He reminds us of the attributes, that perhaps to remind that man that although Allah is kind and merciful, He is also just as well. He's also just as well with all of His creation. And accordingly, we have to make sure that we prepare for that particular day. Final ayat, inshallah, will conclude with this. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. And this ayat of the Qur'an more or less loosely translated as, you alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. And so now, going back from the preceding ayats of the Qur'an, it has been established that the profound truth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greatness, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, all of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been established and made as a base. His grandeur, and of course His dominion, His power, His boundless scopes of His mercy. Now, subhanAllah, this verse now establishes that the one truly, truly worthy of worship is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only one to keep hope and reliance upon is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because everything other than Allah is makhluk. Everything other than Allah is also in need of someone else. There is nothing other than Allah who can provide and give. So after all of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing us to a point that there's only one that you need to serve. There's only one that you need to ask. And this one door will save you from thousands of doors. This one place will stop you from bowing down heads in front of others. If this is one place that you bow your head down towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whose attributes have been made manifest, and whose greatness is evident, and whose authority over the universe is firmly established. And in this particular ayat, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, you alone we worship, you alone we ask for help, meaning we intend and we make you the exclusive one to worship, which is the obedience. And subhanAllah, in these three previous ayats, we understand properly that who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And ulama have mentioned what is ibadah. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, the word ibadah, and of course I can't get to a lot of details of it, but many books of tafseer have mentioned that it is obedience with humility and submission. Meaning, ubudiyat, abd, the climax of becoming the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ubudiyat. And I don't want to get into a lot of Arabic detail because it may confuse, but just to remember, Arabic is so beautiful. The root of ubudiyat, servitude, when you serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or you become the true abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it lies in humility, tawadu, in humbleness. Servitude lies in humility. And that's why the term ubudiyat, which is servitude to Allah, is derived from an Arabic name of a path which is worn out, mu'abbad, because it is beaten up by a trend where you walk so much that the path is beaten up, right? If you have a walkway in your house or a place that you use all the time, you used it so much that the place is like beaten down. That path that you use so excessively and so regularly that it's almost lost its shape itself, that in Arabic language itself is known as mu'abbad, where the word ubudiyat has been taken from, which means the root to serve and servitude with humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you have nothing in front of you. You just humble yourself for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That I have nothing and I am nothing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the excellence of ubudiyat is to create the humility for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some scholars have opined that worship refers to everything that Allah loves subhanahu wa ta'ala and is pleased with of actions and words, both outward and inward. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, actions of inward and outward, all actions that make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy. And Allah alone deserves to be worshipped because He alone is the bestower of blessings. And of course, the greatest of the gift that Allah has given us is of life. Another meaning that is that we give ourselves is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in totality, in all aspects, need to be worshipped. Not selective worship. Not in times that we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the times of happiness, in the times of difficulty, in the times of success, in the times of failure, in the times of joy, in times of sadness, all aspects we need to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can truly only be free when we enslave ourselves to the Creator. Wallahi, this is something that Allah allows us to take back. Brothers and sisters, we can never be free till we do not become the slave of one. We can never be free. We are not free unless we make ourselves the servant of only one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise, we'll be captured from all places. So we can only truly be free when we enslave ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Creator. And the word master and guidance are two things in this ayat. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. There are two things in this particular ayat. The word master and guidance are very frequently mentioned together in the Qur'an. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these two things very frequently. And brothers and sisters, guidance is a set of instructions, according to scholars. A master can only be a master if he is giving right instructions. Otherwise, he cannot be a master. Hence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our master, which means that He gives His instructions to His slave, His servants, that is us. And the second part of this ayat of the Qur'an is, you alone we ask for help. And I'll conclude with this. You alone we ask for help. It means that helps in the matter that we are currently struggling with. You're telling this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're making this dua, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, you're telling this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, I'm already trying to do this, but I'm struggling. Please help me because I can't do it myself. This is what you're telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You're telling this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, I'm doing my best, but Allah, I can't. Please help me. This is what we're asking Allah behind the scenes. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Allah, I'm doing my ibadah. Allah, I'm trying to do the best, but Allah, I can't. So when we do not rely only on supplications as well, rather we make the attempts and the efforts and do whatever we can, and we cannot sit still. But again, we make dua always to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And seeking help refers to relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when seeking to attain what is beneficial and ward off what is harmful as well. And trusting what Allah has in store for us. And this verse also reminds us continuously to seek assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. So concluding this ayat of the Qur'an, the first part of this verse is related to ibadat, worship, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, which means that our primary task in this world is to become the true servants of Allah and to submit ourselves to Allah. That's the first part of this ayat of the Qur'an. The second part is وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, is that relates to seeking the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is mentioned in order, in this particular order, because worship and submission is for Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas the aid is for us. So we put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, and then we put our needs there. And of course, the first qualifies us for the second. The ibadah qualifies us for the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, Allah doesn't need our ibadahs, but we present that, and then we seek Allah's help and assistance. Which means that if we are not submitting ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we should know that we don't qualify for the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something really, really interesting, brothers and sisters. I know it's going to get to a very deep conversation that I don't want to start at the moment. But today, as an ummah at large, we say Allah, Allah, and the help of Allah is not coming. Why is it so? And this is not a hadith, and this is not from a particular narration, but I remember our teachers telling us this, that when a person of Iman and faith, or people of Iman and faith, stand against the people of disbelief, and they're using their tactics, and the believers are asking for help and nusrah. And it's not from the hadith, just the imaginary aspect of it is the angels are sent, and they're looking and they cannot even differentiate who are the Muslims. There's no differentiation. And when they go inside the hearts and say, maybe there is Iman inside, and they go inside and they find the ghayr of Allah in both of their hearts. Where do we ask Allah? So ibadat, ubudiyat will bring the nusrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And that's important for us. And da'wat, ibadat, nusrat and ma'iyat, all of it is connected, which is a different topic to itself, but the Qur'an reminds us in this ayat of the Qur'an. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We submit the first part, that we become, recipient of the second. And if we're not submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then personally we don't qualify for the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have no one to blame except for our own selves, that if we're not getting the nusrat of Allah. If we're not doing إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, then don't expect to do وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Right? Of course, Allah still helps us and provides for us, but this is for us as an ummah to think about ourselves. And others said worship is mentioned before seeking help by way of mentioning what is general before. And of course, this particular ayat as well. In this verse of the Qur'an, there is healing for the hearts, for the people to connect their hearts with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as well as the ailments of showing off and vanity and pride, that ikhlas and sincerity is very, very important. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. That's very, very important. To take away riyah for anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And last two things before we conclude. This ayat of the Qur'an has a plural word. And the ayat of the Qur'an says, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ. We worship you alone. And we ask you for help. Why is it now individual? Why is it I worship you and I ask you for help? It's an individual ibadah. But why do we say we worship you alone and we ask you for help? So ulama have mentioned that the use of the plural pronoun, which is na'budu, we worship, rather than the singular form of a'budu, which is I worship, is to show that the ibadah itself, of course, there's individual ibadat set at their own time, but the ibadat and worship performed collectively, ijtima'i, has more barakah and blessings. That's why jama'ah every single day, being in the masjid every single day, collectiveness every single day, there's more barakah, blessings and khair. It also conveys the message of unity and brotherhood and sincere love for one another and dua for one another and for each other, that we speak on behalf of each other, that we pray on behalf of each other and for each other. And the whole of Islam revolves around two principles. And this is the last thing. Worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibadat and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to understand and reflect over whatever good has been shared. Allow us to live our life in the Qur'an and the beautiful sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Inshallah, we'll have our final session next week, which is the 5th, 6th, and the 7th ayat, inshallah. May Allah accept. If you have any questions, we can take so at this moment, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun